Welcome to Safety Talk. Personal safety expert Pete Canavan shares his insights and interviews experts who provide simple and effective tips, techniques, and technologies to keep you safe and secure both online and off. Here's Pete.
Hello, and welcome to another informative episode of Safety Talk. I am your host, Pete Canavan, and I am joined with my co-host, Neil Haley. Neil, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's Monday's almost over, and it was a busy Monday, and this is a busy week. March really becomes madness in so many ways. I think people wake up when it starts warming up a bit, and we kind of are having a little bit of spring-like weather, but not to the level I want, but at least something.
It's a coming, although our guest today is from Florida, so he can bust our chops about the warm weather there. So first, we're going to take a quick look at some of the safety news this week. And, every week there's always something going on. First of all, there was a major breach of personal data that was reported this week from FEMA. FEMA was actually breached, and they leaked the information of about 2.5 million people out there. This included unbelievable. Some of the survivors of Hurricane Harvey, which hit Texas back in 2017. It revealed personal addresses, banking information, a lot of other stuff. So, this is one of the things we talk about on the show is, protecting yourself, your identity, and all of that. Like from identity theft, that is, just illustrates yet another reason to be vigilant about keeping an eye on your identity, because you never know where your information may be. And if that, particular company, entity ends up getting hacked, it could expose that. So always keep an eye on things.
It scares me because, again, that's where you always constantly have to watch out for it. You always got to constantly see if there is any type of scandal or anything. But these companies should hire someone like you, Pete, to manage it, because that wouldn't happen. In FEMA, that would have been a nice contract.
Yeah, there you go. It's crazy, but it just, it really illustrates the point that it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're the largest government agency or the smallest small business. The chance of a problem happening to you is great. I mean, about 80% of all businesses were the victim of some sort of attempted hack in the last couple of years. And most of them don't even know it. So it's a scary, scary thing. The second piece of news we had has to do with a major cyber attack on some large corporations. And this, they're still sorting through all the details, but again, it illustrates the point that there are people out there looking to do you harm. They are looking to, get into a company, to pull records out, to do whatever they can, whether it's to encrypt that data and hold it for ransom, or whether it's to download it and sell it to a competitor. You never know. So it's extremely important that you always stay as secure as humanly possible. You don't fall for any of these, phishing emails that we see all the time. So it's just scary because there's a lot of problems, and of course there are always going to be legal ramifications. And that kind of leads me right into our guest today, who is an attorney. And our guest today is Carmen Dellutri. And Carmen is a board-certified consumer bankruptcy attorney. He has over 20 years of experience practicing law. And he's also the managing partner of the Dellutri Law Group down in Florida. And he's also the co-founder of the bankruptcylawnetwork.com. Carmen is not your typical lawyer, though. He's the man you want to speak with when it comes to keeping your business, your company, and yourself safe. So I thought he would make a great guest for Safety Talk, and he could talk to us about the legal side of safety today. So welcome to Safety Talk, Carmen. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Neil, for having me. I appreciate it.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Well, maybe you could start our listeners off with a little bit of your background and what it is that you do for your clients, what it is that your company is all about.
Okay, well, kind of going back, I started the Dellutri Law Group with one simple reason in mind. I wanted to represent consumers who are trying to protect themselves from either getting scammed by getting their information stolen, or in the realm of personal injury when they have an injury. So perfect example would be a slip and fall. Somebody goes to the grocery store, they slip and fall. Who's at fault? Is it, the grocery store's fault? Was it the person's fault? I like to protect the consumer against the big business who screws up. If you want to say it that way, have a David and Goliath complex, you might say.
Well, and a lot of times,
Yeah.
people are intimidated by large companies. They may be afraid to report something because they think, who am I? I'm just this person who happened to have a problem, and they're going to bring their attorneys, in, and what chance do I have? So you go after them.
Yep, we do.
So there's hope.
And is there really hope? And that's the thing, Carmen. Is there really hope that you can help the little guy win? And in so many ways, especially when the corporations have so much money and so much power of their attorneys versus someone like yourself. But I know you have power, but can really the little guy win? Because that's some things a lot of people say, I'm just not going to fight. I just know I can't win, so I won't even try.
And that's really, I'm glad you brought up that point. That's exactly where we come into it. Maybe I'm so dumb, I don't know I can lose. But the reality is, if somebody comes into me and says, Carmen, Wells Fargo is taking advantage of me. They're trying to take my house and they've screwed up my payments. Well, then I'm the guy for that person, because I want to go in. I want to see what I can do to help them straighten out their mortgage so they don't lose their house wrongfully. Or like somebody says, hey, Carmen, I was at this local restaurant, and when I walked in the door, they had this piece of metal on the floor that was bent over, and I tripped and fell. I never even saw it. Now my knee's blown out. I've missed 3 weeks of work, and what am I going to do? And I called their insurance company, and the insurance company tells me, well, it's not our client's fault. It's not the restaurant's fault. So, basically, we're not going to give you anything for it. But yet I can't pay my mortgage next month. What do? I'm the guy you want to call, because I will look at those cases, and if I think they have merit, I have no problem suing the big guy. I'm just not worried about it. I'm going to go after him. I'm going to get my client.
That's great. Yeah.
I want them to prove their case. If I can prove my case, then I'm the guy for you. But if I can't prove my case, I'm going to tell you, look, they didn't do something wrong, or,
right.
Something this or something that. I'm going to tell you the truth and say, look, we have a case or we don't have a case, but I'm not going to shy away from it because I'm afraid of a big corporation or, tall building lawyer.
That's true, for sure.
So you want to, obviously help the little guy, but we don't ever want to see a problem like that even happen in the first place. Obviously, we don't want to see people get hurt. And so we want to try to, maybe educate these corporations and different companies and say, hey, what are some things that they can do to, maybe make their property safer? Maybe there's some safeguards. I mean, what would be the main thing that a company could do to, maybe avoid a potential lawsuit from someone like yourself?
Pete, that's a great question. And the reality it comes down to is eliminate carelessness. Educate your employees first on looking for those little things where people can get hurt. I mean, let's say, for example, you have a baby in the house. What do? You run around, you make sure all the corners are taped off, you put on the safety drawers, you do all the things to protect the baby. Similarly, when you have a business, you've got to do everything possible to protect that consumer coming through the door. I mean, look at my office, or a law firm, for example. If somebody's going to come see me, even if they're not going to hire me, they're still coming through my doors, and I still owe them a duty to protect them of hazards which they may not be able to see. The chair, my client chairs, if it's not a good chair, I'm going to have to get rid of that thing.
Exactly.
If it sits in it, that's my fault, because I didn't warn them of that obvious hazard.
So your office has got rubber walls, right?
So it's important for companies, we're not just talking about the individual that's going to sue, that a company, especially bigger companies or even small businesses, really take and look at what they're doing as a company and making sure they're being safe, that they're not putting themselves in opportunities that could be lawsuits, correct?
Absolutely. And again, as a business owner, that's your first duty, is to protect your customer, your client, your consumer who's coming through the door. And again, the business owner, I feel it's incumbent upon them to make sure that the employees know that it's their duty as well to protect that consumer. If you see something that's wrong, take care of it right away. If the door's a little loose, get that door fixed. If the chair's not looking, too sturdy, get that chair out of there. Don't even take the chance of having that problem. So you got a twofold approach. You got the owner who's got to be on vigilant. Then you got the employees who got to be vigilant. But you also the owner's got to buy adequate insurance to make sure that he or she is protected. And I have a great relationship with my insurance agent. I walk out and I say, hey, come on to my place. You're insuring it. You tell me what you've seen in the past that might potentially be a problem for me.
A good friend of mine does that. He goes around and he checks it and he looks for hazards before his company will actually go and insure a property.
Sure.
And he's been dealing with a lot of larger, like malls and things like that, where he's going around into all the different, stores inside there to look for any sorts of hazards before his company will come in and say, okay, we're going to issue you insurance. Now,
Absolutely.
you have your physical door that somebody comes in,
Right.
but there's also the virtual door, right? Where there's the website. So somebody comes to your website and, I was just talking about a data breach, you're trusting that company to protect you, to protect your data, to look out for your well-being, and to put all the proper safeguards in place to prevent against a cyber attack or hacker or some sort of social engineering. And a lot of that is going to fall on the actual education that goes on within that company to let the employees know these are the things you need to look out for. These are the reasons why we do what we do in this company. And I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, there's that physical door they're coming in, and then there's also the digital door.
Sure, absolutely. And we actually had it about maybe a year or two ago, a big data breach down in Southwest Florida. This group, 21st Century Oncology, huge medical practice down here. For some reason, somebody got through their back door, and everybody in town got letters saying, hey, if you were involved in 21st century, people were calling me up saying, I never even went to 21st Century Oncology, but yet somebody's got my information. How did they do this?
Wow.
And again, I'm no cyber criminal war expert, but I know that all these people, it all started when 21st Century Oncology got breached, because it was like wildfire. And everybody was involved in it instantaneously. Right. I mean, instantaneously.
Right. So let's just say I was part of the target breach, right? I used my credit card and my information was taken. Do I even have any opportunity to sue to get some money? I didn't deal with, I don't know if my data ever was one of them that was taken from Target, but do I have any recourse against the company?
I'll be honest with you, Neil, that's a great question. And here's the problem with it. Usually those cases are brought on a class action basis. And I'll use 21st Century Oncology for a guinea pig. They wound up filing bankruptcy, I believe.
Wow.
So any and all causes of action against them were swept up into bankruptcy. But let's say, for example, it's a company that can afford to take the hit. It'll usually turn out to be a class action or multi-district litigation that'll all be consolidated. And then the consumer usually winds up getting a year of credit monitoring for free, which is basically a joke.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, what can you do, really? I mean,
Oh, I got a great story. One of the oh my gosh, this was just really just poorly done. A company, and it'll come to me. Oh, it was one of my financial advisors. They sent an envelope, opened, didn't take like first class mail, sent it. It was open with all my information, Social Security, all that, to sign signatures. And all they offered me was credit monitoring. All they offered me is, hey, we're going to, for a year, look and check to see what happens. So guess what? I took my business elsewhere. I left in a second, said, see you later. I'm getting another financial. And I went off on them. I said, you should give me more. You really messed up. You should fire this person. This was absolutely just done poorly. And it was Edward Jones too. But go ahead, Carmen.
Well, I was going to say there was something that happened to me in that same realm. We were filing a lot of cases in bankruptcy court, and the bankruptcy court changed its rules so that now you could no longer put people's private information out there. And of course, creditors were putting people's private information out there, and I started suing them left and right. I mean, I was filing lots of lawsuits against these guys for breaching my client's data. Well, one of the creditors gets in front of the judge and says, well, Your Honor, we removed that document. And we had a judge who was probably in his mid 80s. And he goes, well, Mr. Dellutri, they just removed the document so that it's gone. I'm like, Your Honor, nothing leaves the internet. Nothing. It's out there somewhere. We could probably pull it up if I had a hacker here in 2 seconds, that we could pull up this private data again. It doesn't go away. You can't just say I fixed the problem because I removed that document. That's not how it works. But he basically said, oh, no, you can't do this anymore. You can't sue the creditors for doing this because if they remove the document, there's no harm, no foul. And I was like, Judge, you don't seem to get it. This is not good. But
no, and unfortunately for him, he doesn't understand it. And, it's a really bad problem. You've got cyber attacks happening left and right. You have the one I just talked about, but it's like every day there's something going on in the news, and it's so important for a company to have a cyber security plan and a program in place that takes a look at everything that happens within the company, starting with their mission and vision, going through all the documents, all the threat potentials, all the risks, and then coming up with a plan, because they're not going to say, well, it's not going to happen to us. Baloney. It is going to happen to you, and the day it happens, you're going to really wish that you had that plan to tell you exactly what to do in order to recover from it.
Yep,
so
I agree.
It's really a scary thing. What let's see what other question I could ask you here. When you have a company that's facing a lawsuit, okay, or maybe they've just gone through a major lawsuit, and they're thinking to themselves, "Man, I do not want to go through that again." Is there something that they could do to sort of make that lawsuit or future lawsuits be maybe a little bit more preventable? Because they're no fun for anybody.
They're not. And it depends on what type of business it really is. I mean, if it's a business that's got a lot of consumer foot traffic, like just say for my office, for instance, we got people coming in and out the door all day long. And there's potential in rainy season in Florida. If you've ever been here, every afternoon, the skies open up, bam, we get hit with rain, everything's soaking wet, people don't wear the right shoes, and they might slip and fall. So what you can do? You can go out, you can put like a sandy grit on all of your, walkways. You can put rugs out to sop up the water, but you never know what's going to happen. So you've got to take extra precautions, knowing your audience.
That's great.
And knowing the weather conditions to prevent those injuries. In other words, what I'm saying in a nutshell is the business owner has to go that extra step to protect against those non-obvious hazards, because the consumer who's running from his car because he forgot his umbrella isn't really going to be paying attention. He's going to want to avoid that heavy downpour. He's not worried about when he takes that next step, is that surface going to be slippery or not? And that's where you see a lot of problems happen. But that, and again, having your employees be super diligent about, consumer safety. Those are the types of things that a business owner has to take seriously, or else when it does happen, they're going to go back into preventative mode, say, well, this guy did this guy did this, rather than saying, what did we do wrong? And I think that's where a lot of business owners make the mistake. We just went through one hell of a lawsuit, and, we didn't think that person was really hurt. But the reality is if they had taken 5 minutes of precaution, it never would have happened. And that's really something that you got to take seriously and say, I don't want to be there again. So what can I do to change my behavior so I'm not there again?
So Carmen, you play both sides of the fence in way.
No.
Like you represent, you're always going against the corporation.
I'm always on the side of the consumer.
But you're trying to give other people tips so that they don't end up in a lawsuit.
Of course.
Yeah. But you really, when you're in court, you're shocked, right? At how negligent sometimes businesses are, right? And what their thought process is about the bottom line, and they don't look at these other things when treating customers and all that. Yeah.
Pete, I could tell you stories that would make your head spin.
Oh, I'm sure, because people don't, they think, well, it's an added expense. Why do I need to make that expense if the risk, and we're talking about risk, is so low that the chance of it happening is, almost nil. Well, almost nil isn't nil. And the other thing is you've got to also assess the seriousness of that risk, whether it's in the physical realm, walking into a business or at a store or corporation or whatnot, or you're online somewhere. You've got to analyze the seriousness of a potential risk and then say, okay, what can I do to mitigate that risk? And is it worth me spending X number of dollars to make that risk go away? And if that amount is less than the costs of not doing it, or of a company's, assets, or the processes or the procedures that, that are making money, well, then you should do it. If it's too much, like if it's going to cost you, $100,000 to fix a problem, but yet, your company's only making $100,000, well, you're not going to fix the problem. It's not worth it. So there's a lot of things that have to be weighed in. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Yeah,
well, you just talked about the Ford Pinto case all over again. Do you remember the Ford Pinto case?
With the rear gas tank blown up?
That's the make or buy decision is made every day by businesses. And when that business owner walks through the door, he may know he needs a new front door because the hinges are falling off. Is he going to make that change?
No way. No.
Of course not, Neil. He's not going to make that change. He's going to say, do whatever you can to help the consumer get in the door. When you see somebody walk up to the door, run out and open it for them rather than spend that money. But it's the best money he ever spent, because when that door falls on somebody's head, let's hope it's an 18-year-old kid who can withstand the pressure, and rather than a 5-year-old kid with his mom.
Right.
So why do school districts make that mistake a lot of times when they know they're not going to win and then they still just go after it? I'm an educational advocate, and I've been in cases where literally I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to fight this and there's no way you're winning. And you're going to keep fighting and then spend this money, and you're going to end up, you should settle now and be done with it and just give in instead of taking it all the way, thinking you have a shot at winning. It's ridiculous.
Because I think there's a lot of knuckleheads in the world who are pulling the strings. And I can give you some examples of that. I've been in cases which I could have settled right at the beginning for $1,500. At the end of the case, then they have to pay my attorney's fees and my client, and now they're arguing with me over how much they got to pay me in attorney's fees when they could have settled it for like peanuts to start off with, because it was such a small injury. But the law says they have to pay my attorney's fees. So now they're paying their attorney's fees, they're paying my attorney's fees, and they're crying about this. And I look at them saying, I'm not going to give you any mercy.
Right.
There's no way. Is your attorney going to cut their fees? I mean, and again, I like to make fun of the big banks here. They can't fix anything. They can't do anything right, in my opinion, but yet they fight you on it. And you say, look, here's your mistake. But they hire some tall building lawyers who are billing like $700-800 an hour. And these lawyers, I don't know if they're blowing smoke up, the butts or whatever. But the point of it is, if you're wrong, you settle the damn case. If you're right and you got a legitimate fight, then you fight. And I'm not going to say don't fight if you're right. But if you're wrong, settle the case early on and fix the problem for next time. But it's those guys.
And you just talked about like fixing a problem like with a door. So what other, I guess you could say, like maybe known and unknown property hazards could there be at a business that maybe some business owners may not even think of that could harm someone?
Well, just if you have a foot traffic business or the retail store or whatever, just do what the consumer does when they come in your office. They open the door, they walk in, they go to the front desk. Okay, have a seat in some of our client chairs. Check all the client chairs. Make it a point to check them once a month. It takes about 5 minutes to do, but you're doing it and you're diligent about it. And then if something ever does happen, you get to tell the jury, oh, by the way, we run checks every month to make sure all of our chairs are working, all of our rugs are clean, they're vacuumed, there's nothing on the floor. We do inspections. Well, what happens when a consumer has to go to the bathroom? Okay, they go down the hall, they open the door. What happens there? Well, it's a small bathroom. We make sure that when all the employees use the bathroom, that it's clean, there's nothing on the floor, there's no leaks. Okay, great. You got to have these systems in place to protect yourself. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's not something that no business owner can't do. Everybody can get involved and say, look, we're here to protect our clients and our consumers so that we don't get sued. I mean, nobody wants an insurance claim.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to fall and hurt. It's not good for business.
Do you see a situation at one point in time where security issues with that campus, a school, a college, or even a business that doesn't have the proper security in place, and an active shooter happens, or a serious, God forbid, type of tragedy, that they're going to be lawsuits based on that? Do you think it's coming down the pike, or it's already happened and you've been involved in something like that?
Well, I think in today's world that you got to have, in a situation like that, and let's just use a college campus. Let's pick University of South Florida, okay, where I went to college. It's a huge campus. Protection of students has got to be the number one goal there. So they've got to have at least a minimum standard of what they're going to do.
Right.
But if the west side of the campus has had the most assaults, then you're going to have to beef up security over there. You can't just say we're going to spread it out. Everybody gets, this, that, or the other thing. Everybody gets equal shares of this massive campus. So we're going to have one security guy in every acre of land. You can't do that. So what do? Well, if the west side is having problems, you're going to have to set up more security there. It's kind of like border wall fencing.
Right.
If people are coming through the Rio Grande, okay, let's put more security there. Let's put drones. Let's put this. Let's put that. And I think campuses have, a paramount duty to protect the students. Paramount. There can't be a bigger calling than to protect the students, especially
That's exactly, I'm preaching that all the time. College safety is huge.
That's got to be, it's huge. And I have a daughter who's going away to college. So of course you're hitting a chord with me when you're talking about, college safety. And again, number one, you got to educate the students. You got to they all have to know how to protect themselves. You got to have the school who's got their own systems, and the students got to know how to protect themselves. I've heard of some schools where they have, all have apps now where the student, if they need a ride, there's a ride share. There's a ton of ways to do it. But if a student's walking home late from the library alone and says, well, it's just a 5-minute walk, then they've taken matters into their own hands. Now you've got a situation where the school has gone over and above, yet the student they've taken a deviant route, or they've taken an alternative pattern. Is that the student's fault? Or should the school have been prepared for that?
Right.
That's a tough call. That's a jury question. That's one of those calls where you look at it and you say, okay, what more could the school have done? The school has done A through Y, but should they have done Z? That's a tough call. That's really a tough call.
And like you said, that'll depend on the jury and the situation and a host of other factors. So if someone is injured, whether it's on a college campus or in a corporation, what should be the first thing that they do?
Oh, good question. Number one, if they're injured, obviously call for medical attention immediately, whatever that is. Number two, you would have to contact the school. And this is where it gets a little dicey, because I don't want to tell people to run to a lawyer right away. Because if you're injured, and it's not that bad, and the school takes responsibility, like they have a premise liability policy where you went to the emergency room, it was $5,000, and they have a $5,000 insurance policy. All right, I had a bloody knee, I fixed it, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
An assault's a different story.
Sure.
Somebody gets assaulted on a college campus. Now you're talking, okay, who owned the building? Did it happen at a fast food place? Who was responsible for the security at the fast food place? What was the protocols they used? And then you're probably going to need an attorney to figure this one out, because ultimately, if somebody did something wrong, you're still going to have to prove it in court. You can't just make allegations. Oh, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. What was the policy? What happened? Was it, you go back to, was there a duty to protect the students? Of course. Did the person who was responsible for that duty breach it? Yeah. Was it foreseeable that if they breached the duty that somebody would get injured? And then was it the legal cause? Those are your 4 elements of negligence. You got to prove foreseeability. You got to prove legal cause. You got to prove duty there was a duty to protect, and that they breached the duty. And then you get to the issue of damages, but you never get to damages unless you can prove all those other elements.
Excellent. And of course, I would say, make sure you file a police report so that there's an official record and accounting of everything, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. That's obviously, the first thing you want to do is, if you're injured, get medical attention, but you also got to call the police report. And I was including that in get medical attention when you say, look, you got to report this to somebody.
Yeah,
sure.
Have you taken any cases like that where it involves security and poor security done? Have you ever had those kind of lawsuits?
Yes, but the last one I can tell you about, I can't talk about. Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. It just illustrates the point to people listening that it happens, and it happens just like the situations we're just kind of envisioning and coming up with in some sort of what if scenarios. And there you're saying, yep, I'm dealing with them. I'm dealing with it now, and it's real, and it happens because these are things that happen all the time, no matter where somebody is. It's a commercial property, education, like you said, a restaurant. These things happen everywhere. And it's unfortunate.
Cruise ships.
Oh, how about what's going to happen with these people on this cruise ship now?
Oh yeah, that's coming. Trust me,
man. That's hairy. They had to, take everybody off on a helicopter. Can you?
I think taking a chance, taking a cruise, you're pretty much rolling the dice that something's going to happen.
I would think you have to sign something that says, "Hey, there's a chance that there could be some major problems."
I don't think people don't do that. And then the truth of the matter is, if you hear about all the bad cruise ship fiascos, Carnival Cruise, places like that, they don't do anything. And then they don't try to take care of their customers at all in certain aspects. So the cruises, watch out for them. I'm sure
Well,
he's gotten those phone calls, Carmen. I'm sure
Just
about cruises.
read the back of the tickets that you buy when you buy a cruise.
I
That's
was
all I'm
just going to say there's got to be fine print, and you would know, right? It's going to say we are not responsible for Mother Nature, right? Acts of nature. And that's basically, if you're caught in high seas and you get washed overboard, hey, we told you that could
We
happen.
told you.
Exactly.
You're right.
And now you go to court, it's like, now what? Well, hey, you signed off on it. You got on the boat. You knew it was happening. By buying this ticket, you agree to A through Z,
Yep.
right? And you may be, up the creek. You may not have a leg to stand on, but depending on what happens, I'm sure there's other things that can then occur. But yeah, I mean, you exactly know what you're getting into. I think is a great takeaway from that. That's for sure. So if something does happen, are there what I mean, it's kind of a tough question, but are there certain parameters where you can sue for personal injury versus not sue for personal injury? Like, let's just take that cruise ship example. You're caught on a cruise ship, the seas are rough, a table goes sliding down, smashes you into the leg, you break a leg. Okay. What do you do? Who's liable?
It's a good question. That's a really good question. And you might even get into issues of products liability there. Was the table manufactured in a reasonable manner? And there's just a whole host of issues there that would have to be investigated. You'd obviously want to look for videotape and see, was there anything videotape out there so we could really see what happened, because most of the time the people never see it coming. And all of a
Right.
sudden, bam, what do you do? And
Yeah,
is
what
it
can you
reason-
do when you're rolling in crazy high seas and stuff's flying all over the place? I mean, batten down the hatches, huddle under
Batten down
your,
the hatch.
literally, and there's not a whole lot you can do because the risks are going to be there.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm assuming, there are times when you can sue versus when you can't sue. I mean, is there like sort of a general, I guess you could say, uh, a general statement you could make about when you could or could not sue for something that's personal injury related? I mean, obviously, if you do it to yourself, I mean,
you always got to look at, what are the circumstances surrounding it? And you go back to a general negligence theory, okay? Was the business owner / cruise line negligent? And you got to ask yourself, honestly, those 4 elements. Was there a duty? Did they have a duty to protect the consumer or the person who's walking in the door? Did they breach that duty? And that's got to be clear. You got to have a duty and it's got to be breached. And then it's got to be the legal cause, and it's got to be foreseeable that if this person didn't do what they were supposed to do, that somebody could get hurt. And that's where you always start with those 4 bedrock principles. And if you don't have any damages, you don't have a lawsuit.
right.
And the people don't understand that. Oh, well, I was on a cruise ship and I went and got my lunch and there was broken glass in it. Well, did you eat the broken glass? No. I'm sorry, you don't have a case. And again, that's horrible. It's a horrible thing to see. And it's a horrible thing to do. But a dead spider in my food. Okay. Did you eat it? No, I did not. Did you get sick? No, I did not. I'm really sorry. Case closed. And now there might be attorneys who take that because the person was traumatized. I wouldn't. It's just not my thing. I want to know that the person is truly damaged and they meet all the qualifications that I require before I'm going to file a lawsuit against somebody.
And that's kind of interesting because we seem to be in this place in society today where a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people look at a lawsuit and then, could be a frivolous lawsuit, but they look at a lawsuit as a way to easy money. It's like, you know what? I mean, we could go back and look at that, hot coffee McDonald's case years and years ago. The coffee's hot, you spill the coffee on yourself. Well, they managed to get money out of that.
Yeah.
But there are so many, I think, people that don't think it through. They look at it as a way to maybe, make an easy buck.
Sure.
Without thinking it all the way through. I mean, have you seen, or maybe your colleagues, have they seen an increase in, I guess, frivolous lawsuits from people that maybe are desperate and looking to make a quick buck or not?
It's that would be, I bet you each attorney could answer that question for themselves. We're fortunate where we get to pick and choose the cases that we want to bring. So, for example, if you brought me a case, we're going to thoroughly vet that case out before I file a lawsuit.
Right.
If you're gonna say, Carmen, I slipped and fell at a restaurant on Saturday night. Okay, how many witnesses were there? Who saw it? Who did you report it to? Is there videotape? I want the videotape. I want to talk to all the witnesses before I'm ever going to file a lawsuit. I
Sure.
want to read the insurance policy. I want to know who was responsible for the ground, what they did wrong before I'm going to file a lawsuit. So you really got to investigate those claims. Same thing with anything that happens on a cruise ship, or somebody walks into your business and says, "Oh, I walked in the door and I slipped and fell." Okay, what'd you fall on? What kind of shoes were you wearing? Where had you been before that? Were you just in a gas station where you had oil all over your shoes and you tracked oil into my store and you fell? And
Oh, interesting. Sure.
a lot of moving parts, in those types of cases. And again, it comes down to the consumer or the business owner being aware of his surroundings, trying to make them as safe as possible, the employees trying to make it as safe as possible. And then if an accident does truly happen, okay, that's what you buy insurance for. Again, for that accident that truly happens. But I always tell people, whenever you're looking at a lawyer on TV, and in Florida, we have to have the law books behind us, making us look smart. I know you're laughing at us, but it's kind of embarrassing. But the reality is those books were filled with stories. Well, you're never going to believe what happened, and then that's what those stories are. Stories that never were supposed to happen, but then it happens. Now you got to figure out who is at fault, why were they at fault, and how do we compensate the victim if it's truly an act of negligence.
Yeah, all the case law.
Right, exactly. So how about the guy a couple of weeks ago that slipped on purpose and was caught on camera?
Oh,
Were you been happy, Cameron, if you had to take that case and then you found out later and saw the tape?
No, I would not be happy with that clown at all if that was one of my clients. But I ask him right up front. I ask him right up front, if I find out that you are going to do this, you realize that we're going to go New Jersey on you.
yeah, you tell them.
They understand.
Sure, because you're wasting your time, your energy, your money, and everything, and your resources, and
my reputation on the line.
And your reputation, absolutely,
and it means a lot. It really does. I mean, you get branded as an attorney who's bringing frivolous cases, word's going to spread like wildfire. You don't want that,
right? No, that's ridiculous. So when you do have a valid case, and I mean, there are many of them in your 20 plus years, of course, it's going to be all over the board. But when you decide to pursue a case, file a lawsuit, what would you say on average, it probably could be a big average, but the average time to process, that, and then, what would the outcome most of the time be?
Well, let's just say, are we talking about somebody who gets hurt on a business?
Yeah, like a personal injury thing, an average time. From the time they file it, can they say, well, don't expect to see a dime for 3 years, that kind of thing?
I would guesstimate between roughly 12 months to 18 months before you're even in a position to start settling the case or even getting ready to file a lawsuit.
So what if the company doesn't have the money to pay for it? What happens then?
The question would be do they have insurance?
What if they don't?
If they don't have insurance and they don't have any money, I would really have to sit and evaluate the assets of the company to determine whether or not it's worth pursuing. Because like Pete said, that company could either close up or file bankruptcy. And then you have to tell your client, this is a bad business decision. I mean, the practice of law, as wonderful as it is, it's still a business. And if I take too many cases that I don't make any money on, well, then my employees are not going to be employees anymore. They're going somewhere else. And my clients, they might be really happy that I've won them these great judgments, which is only a piece of paper that says, all right, John Smith wins from XYZ Corporation $100,000, but he can never collect on it. So what good is it?
Right. And that's, unfortunately, that's what you were saying earlier in the program about the medical, the company down in Florida by you. They went out of business, so nobody gets anything from that, and it's unfortunate.
It really,
that happened in the first place.
And again, in a big case like that with a big data breach, the reality is the insurance companies come in and the lawyers are going to come in and they're going to try to settle that thing as fast as possible before people realize how badly damaged they are. I mean, if you think about it today, that if you're part of the FEMA data breach, holy crap, my information's out there now forever.
Yep.
Forever. And I laugh at these dark web companies, oh, your information may be out there on the dark web, but it's real. And might not call it the dark web, but it's real. And
sure.
People don't realize how much their data and their personal information is worth. And
Right.
you try to talk to young people about this and say, look, don't give your personal information over the internet. And they sit there and go, why not? I can get this free thing. Oh boy, here we go. And they don't realize how important it is, because that information's never going to go away.
No,
And so what about reputation? Have you had lawsuits where, again, because you're taking on the small man, has the small man gotten reputations taken away, a small business that somebody has really ruined their reputation? Why is there really not much liability on the internet? Blogs or different things that are put up that could be fake news, and yet there's no way of really going after somebody on that kind of situation.
Because it's an absolute free-for-all. I'll be honest with you. It's an absolute free-for-all. And we had a situation arise where there was a website out of Washington. And what they were doing is posting people's information who had VD or venereal diseases, like, horrifying things. And they were outing people who had these things. So I was called by our local news media and said, what would you do? And I said, well, in Florida, I'd sue them. And the guy called me up. He wrote me a threatening letter saying, you said you would sue me, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote him back very simply, said, I just hope anybody you outed doesn't find me as your attorney, because I will sue you. There's no doubt about it. I will haul you into court in Florida, and then you can test our theories as to what you think you're eligible to say under the First Amendment or under the Florida laws. You can test it here, but you will be sued. And he did not like that at all.
No, I can imagine not. So if somebody is facing a personal injury lawsuit,
Right.
Where can they go to find a lawyer? Because I mean, it seems like there are a lot of different lawyers. You don't know really, who to trust, who to go to, who's recommended. What would you say in terms of where should somebody go to start their search for a reliable attorney?
Okay, if they have insurance, then the insurance company is duty bound to hire a lawyer for them, provide them with a lawyer. Okay, let's say they don't have liability insurance for some reason or another, and they just open up a small business and they get, somebody falls on their ice cream truck or whatever. Well, then what I would do is I would call a good personal injury attorney and say, look, who's the biggest jerk lawyer out there who's going to make this plaintiff's life a living hell if he sues him? And we all know who they are. But
interesting.
You think about it, you say, okay, if there's an insurance company out there who represents automobiles, I don't really like them that much, right? Because when I sue them, they make my life a living hell. So guess where I buy my auto insurance from?
Oh.
If I'm ever in an accident and somebody wants to sue me, I don't want them to have an easy time. I don't want an insurance company that's going to stroke a check really easy. I want somebody who's going to have to work for that money.
Gotcha.
And I know that sounds bad, but the reality is, an insurance company is going to raise my rates no matter what. If they're not going to fight for me and say, look, my guy's right. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, I've had accidents before. I've backed into cars. I get out and say, here's my information. Call my insurance company. And if you have any problem with them at all paying this claim, call me and I will sue my own insurance company for not doing what they're supposed to do. Because I was wrong. I backed into your car. It's my fault. And
Wow.
I will help you get that claim paid, because that's what I bought the insurance for.
Interesting.
So I won't lie to my insurance company to try to save myself a few bucks. That's not the way it works. But if I'm right and I didn't do anything wrong, then I don't want my insurance company paying a claim. That's ridiculous.
And unfortunately, a lot of people do that. They will, they'll say, hey, that wasn't me. I didn't back into them. They backed into me. Really? That's why the dent's on their door and yours is on your rear bumper. I didn't know a car could drive that way.
I guess, think about it. Growing up in New Jersey, everything is about accountability. You know what I mean? And for me, accountability is big. So I don't like it when a client comes in and they're going to fabricate a story. I've been around the block too many times. I see it. I can say, look, I don't like your case. There's about 5 other attorneys I can give you the name of. They'll probably take this case, but I'm not going to do it. It's not worth my time and effort to jerk around with somebody who's not going to be honest with me. But when somebody is honest with you, you take them for what they're worth, and then you got to fight for them and say, you know what? Wrong is wrong. Let's get you compensated for what you lost, because that's not fair.
Right.
So it comes down to right is right and wrong is wrong.
What is the reason, especially, it seems like you're very busy with your law firm, to come on a show like this to promote and teach us a lot of the different things about helping the little man beat the big man when things are wrong, especially.
Well, I think in today's world, there's, when I started out, that's a great question, by the way, Neil. Thank you for that. When I started out, I didn't have the manpower, the reputation, or the money to take on the big guys.
Right.
So I had to refer those cases out. But I always knew one day that I would be in a position to help that consumer who couldn't help themselves. So you might say I have a complex, or that I really don't like the way businesses take advantage of consumers. I like business. Business has to be run the right way. And when a business gets too big, where they think that they're better than the consumer, or they can take advantage of the consumer, then I get upset. And I think, you know what, that's a bad business decision. But I think business can be run, it can be run right, and yet keep the safeguards in place to make sure that the consumer, the client, the small individual can still put their trust in that company and say, you know what, they do the right thing every time. They don't hedge, they don't cut corners, they don't, if a door's falling off, they don't let the door fall off, they don't use weak chairs in their conference room, the rugs aren't peeling up at the end where I can trip and fall. They do the right thing every time. And if businesses were run that way with integrity, then I think it would be a different world.
It's a very good statement. And, the majority of them do, but there are many, unfortunately, that do not. And I hear you. It's kind of like a pet peeve, right? It's like, you know what? You're not doing the right thing. You should be doing the right thing. And guess what? Now I got somebody that's going to come after you for not doing the right thing. And I'm going to be more than happy to come after you for that. And I applaud you for that because, I'm also a Jersey boy. I grew up in North Jersey. And like you said, right is right and wrong is wrong. And if somebody is not doing the right thing, they need to be held accountable for that. And so that's a fantastic, I think, point of view to have, to be able to tell people, look, there's hope for you. Don't feel that just because you're an individual and you are up against a huge corporation or a huge financial institution or whatnot, that you have no chance of seeing, any sort of, resolution that's going to be in your favor. No, there is a chance, and there's a good chance depending on what it is that we're looking at here. And that's where, like you said, you come in, you vet them, you look at all the facts, you determine whether or not it's something that you're willing and is worth pursuing. And then here you go. Here I come, right?
100 miles an hour.
100 miles an hour.
100 miles an hour.
What is we'll start to wrap up, but what is the one thing that you would say to people about staying safe? And I guess probably, with regard to what it is that we're talking about here today.
I guess just really just pay attention and know your surroundings. Really just put the darn cell phone down when you're walking, put it down when you're driving, and pay attention to what's really going on around you. And again, I guess it's just where I grew up, that we always knew our surroundings. And I have a constant sense of knowing what's happening around me. I'm always looking out. Now, do I miss things? Of course, every once in a while, I might say, wow, how did I miss that? I can't believe I missed that. But it's always really just paying attention to what's going on around you, watching out, opening the door. And maybe it's the business I'm in. I'm always cautious. I see somebody, don't run up and pet the dog. Yeah. Ask the owner, may I pet the dog? Is it okay? Is it safe to pet the dog? That doesn't mean the dog's going to bite, not going to bite you, but you never know. And if you ask permission rather than just run up, because I've seen so many kids get mauled by dogs, it's horrifying. And it possibly could have been prevented. So, for me, know your surroundings. I guess what I want to say is, teach your kids to know their surroundings as well, so that they don't put themselves in positions where they could be a victim.
Excellent. And I tell people that all the time. My personal mantra that I use all the time is you need to be armed with awareness, because it's something that can never be taken away from you. Okay. Right. Like any device can be taken away from you. Any weapon can be taken away from you, but your awareness can never be taken away from you. So if you're always aware of the people around you, the places where you are going, and the objects around you, the surroundings, whether it's a safety risk or just, what's going on or what maybe you could use as an improvised weapon or something to protect you against even a dog, coming
Right.
at you, right? These are things that if we live in a state of heightened awareness, okay, not paranoia, but just
Not
being
paranoid.
in a state of heightened awareness about things that are around us, things that there could be potential risks, that we're going to be a lot safer. The world's going to be a lot safer. And, people in general are going to have a lot less to worry about. And there will be, more and more companies out there that are doing the right thing because they're going to be more aware of the things that could be potential risk to their patrons, to their employees, to their clients, to their vendors, to whoever, both in the physical standpoint of being in their business, in their building, et cetera, but also with regard to the safeguards that they have in place or don't have in place with the online, world, with the data of those people that they're doing business with. And we've touched on both of those, but you know what? They're two sides of the same coin. And I say it
Right.
all the time. You have your safety in the physical world, and you have your safety in the digital world. And you have to be aware of the risks that exist in both of them. And you've given us a really good perspective on ways that you can improve your safety in the physical world, and some things that corporations need to, think about and take to heart. And also that, consumers and the individual can say, you know what, hey, a lot of this is on me, but when it's not on me, then at least I know that there's somebody that can go out and they can fight for what is right.
Right. I agree with that. That's great. Well said. I like that a lot. Very well said. Thank you.
Sure. And we appreciate you having on. And you got anything there, Neil? You wanna add?
I guess pretty much we've said it all. I think that ultimately it's the contact an attorney is a very, very important thing. One of the things I would say is, Carmen, I think you recommend that any small business or business alone should have some sort of legal representation, because you never know when something's going to happen, right?
Right. I agree. Yes.
Make sure you got enough insurance too.
Always.
You
And
gotta have insurance.
nobody likes buying insurance, but the reality is when you need it, you want it there to protect you. So make your insurance agent your friend.
Excellent. And mine's been mine for over 20 years. So if people are interested in learning more about you, Carmen, and your services, where can our listeners go to learn more?
Oh, you can go to our website. Our website's www.dellutrilawgroup.com.
And
That's
we'll have
pretty much
that.
it. I'm all over the web, I guess. We have a pretty big social media presence, but really our firm is big on giving away free information. If somebody has questions or anything, I'll be more than happy to shoot a video, a blog, or something like that and answer questions for people. So that helps them out in any way I possibly can.
Oh, that's fantastic. We appreciate that. And thanks, Carmen, so much for being on the show. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in to Safety Talk. You will be able to listen to this episode, see us on YouTube, and it'll be out there on the various podcast networks. So make sure you get any of your information, the latest news about safety at safetytalkpodcast.com. And next week we'll have another great guest for you guys, and we'll see what that'll hold in store. So until next time, everybody stay safe. And Carmen, thanks again.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Neil. Have a great
All
night.
right. You're welcome.